Before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to share with you my new favorite virtual vision board. You know that I love all things affirmations, visualization, and meditation, and we talk about these topics often on the podcast. So when I came across the Perfectly Happy Vision Board app, I was really excited to try it out. What I love most about it is that it's a convenient and powerful way to visualize your dream life, become clearer in what you want to achieve, and it helps you stay focused and motivated. I also love that you can set multiple daily reminders to take a mindfulness break and help you visualize your dreams, which, as you know, helps you build a resilient mindset. What you do is you download the app and you go through the steps to create your own vision board, where you can add in photos and music and affirmations to each area of your life that you're trying to manifest in. The best part is that all of the things that you need are already in the app. The combination of sound and photo and affirmations makes your vision board more vivid and ultimately easier to manifest. What I also love is that you can write unlimited daily gratitude journal entries to help you reflect on your day and really build that gratitude muscle. I can honestly say that all of the things that I put on my own vision board have happened, and it was so wild to see it all come to life. It only takes 3 minutes per day, and I really think that we all have 3 minutes. Start your free trial of the Perfectly Happy app by clicking on the link in the show notes. Okay, let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to the Happiness Happens podcast. Thanks for joining me for another incredible conversation. This week's podcast is so special to me because one of my dearest and best friends is joining me on the show today. Her name is Steph, and she is on with her sister Jenn today. They are sisters and they're co-founders of SooZoo Kids. I am just so thrilled for them in their new business venture that when I found out they launched their product officially, I just had to bring them on the show and just had to bring them to you because they're both just such inspirational people who have decided to dive into business together. So I could not wait to invite them onto the podcast to talk all about SooZoo Kids. It's a kids decor company specializing in wall stickers and wall decals for nurseries, kids' rooms, playrooms, or really any space in your home. Steph and Jenn design, create, print, and distribute their products from start to finish, and they pride themselves in sourcing materials within North America. With their combined background in education and marketing, they strive to help educate and inspire kids through art and design. We talk all about what it's like to be working together as sisters. How do you divide the tasks and who takes care of what? Where do you even begin when you don't really have any experience in business? And how to sort of just take your idea from concept to creation. I love this episode. I love them both so dearly. I'm so excited to bring you this conversation, and also right in time for the holidays. So if you're looking to decorate your kids' rooms or your playrooms or do any renovations or buy any gifts, maybe even for someone who is expecting, someone who maybe has just had a kid, and someone who just you think wants to spice up their space, definitely check out their products. All of the links are in the show notes. So be sure to check those out as well. And let's dive in with Steph and Jenn. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. So excited to have Jenn and Steph with me today from SooZoo Kids, and I'm so excited to chat with them a little bit more about their brand, their company, and all the amazing things they have going on. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, everyone. Thank you.
So excited to chat with you both. I have to throw in here really quick that Steph is one of my really good friends. And so when they started this company, it was kind of a no-brainer. And I was like, will you come onto the podcast and, share with all of our listeners all the amazing things that you both do? So I'm really glad that you said yes.
Yeah, we're so excited. And this will be our first podcast. So
yay. I'm so excited to be the first one. I think you're going to love it. And it's going to be all the way up from here. So To dive in, can you just give our listeners a little bit background of, who you both are and a little bit about the journey that brought you sort of together in this business and then to creation of the business?
So I'm the older sister, and basically I just found that I've been jumping careers like every 2 to 3 years, and I've always been working for somebody else. And there were a few factors that kind of fell into play with inspiration and in the moment things coming up, and then this kind of happened naturally. So
then by profession, I'm a teacher. I just came off of maternity leave to the pandemic and a lot of craziness in that whole world. So basically what happened was we were decorating Everett's, my son's big boy room. So that's kind of what led us on this path towards starting SooZoo Kids. So we were looking for inspiration and everything online, and you kind of want something that fits your vision, but we weren't coming across exactly that, or like the prices were just out of our budget and it just didn't work well with our vision. So then in talking with Jen, she had been working with a lot of artists. She has a great background in marketing, and had kind of already been introduced to this world of printing and had a great basis for us to go off of to start this little venture.
That is so cool. And I love so much that it was built out of, in the time of like pandemic, because while it was such a crazy, and we're still in it, let me just say that, but while it's such a crazy time, so many incredible ideas are born, so many amazing companies. And you start these different things in that, in just taking a leap of faith, you know what I mean? Like Steph, because we know each other, like I know you weren't an entrepreneur before this, you know what I mean? And so it just kind of goes to show, and sort of, I wanted to sort of highlight for everyone who's listening right now that just because you've never done it before, it doesn't mean that, you can't follow this crazy dream and idea and actually bring it to life. Like there's no reason why that can't happen, right? And I would love to know about the name. So like, how did you come up with the name?
So we were both actually teaching Japan. We were teaching English. We went over together. We worked for the same company. We were living in the same little town on Kyushu called Saga. And there, one of the first words that we learned was SooZoo, which means to create, to inspire. And it just kind of stuck. And then being back when we were brainstorming for a name, and sometimes that's the hardest part of starting a business, finding the name. So that word kind of popped into our head, and we thought we would change it up a little bit to anglicize it, and we made it SooZoo, and that's how we got our name.
I love that. And I think it's also really like, it has that double meaning, right? It has the meaning from what the actual like word means in, in Japan, but then it also has like, you think of like zoo and then kids, like it kind of is perfect. And then some of the designs that you have are animals and that kind of stuff. Like it just makes a lot of sense. I love that.
Thanks. It just kind of clicked, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. And you know what, Jen, you're so right. It actually is the name that can be the hardest part, because you can have all the ideas and then you sit and you're like, okay, but what am I going to call it? So can you sort of tell us, how long did it take you to go from like concept and idea all the way to creation? And like, tell us about that process. And especially, I mean, your sister, so working together, like how was that?
Well, we first kind of started playing with the idea of doing our own decor for kids and stuff when Steffi was decorating Everett's room. And from concept to fruition, we were playing with it for about 6 months, I think. And also getting feedback from like a lot of her friends and neighbors. Once she was showing them, oh, look what we're doing. And then they're like, oh my God, can you do this for me? But here's a picture, but I really want it to look like this a little bit more. So can you do that for me? So suddenly we found that we were becoming designers. And then it just kind of grew from there. But it was a long process because we weren't sure exactly how we wanted to look. And it's not like we were looking to get into business for ourselves. It was just a few things that fell into place and inspiration hit.
Yeah. And then working together, I mean, obviously it's going to come with its quirks and its fair share of going back and forth. But for the main part, I think it's pretty smooth sailing. I mean, we're still working out all the kinks, right? So as with any business, yeah, I'm happy with it. And I mean, come on now. Like, working this duo.
Oh my God, I love that so much. And you know what, though, it's true. I mean, when you're working with a sibling, it's like a different type of relationship to begin with. So you can kind of like get away with more things. You can actually be more truthful and more honest. So it's like, I feel like even if you do disagree on some things, it's like you can sort of deflate the situation so much better than if you were working with, a business partner or something like that, right? Because you have to be careful when it's like, when it's family, it's a different story.
Oh yeah, you can just unleash. And I've definitely unleashed, but we know how to rein it back in, and we understand the other person a little bit more. So, when she's having a rough day, or I'm having a rough day, or it's that time of the month and all that. So. These things are important.
They are important. They actually are so important. Okay, I love all of this. And in terms of all of your different designs, so how do you like how, okay, so you were saying that you came up with them by testing with like friends and neighbors and stuff like that. So you have like a roster of designs now that you use, you know, that you have online, because I've seen all of your designs online and they are so cute. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't want kids anytime soon, but I'm like, wow, I can't wait. Like, I'm like, do I just decorate my dog's like wall in the living room with these? No, I'm just kidding. But I keep thinking like how amazing and how fun is that? And so how do you create them? Do you have like an overseas type of setup where like they'll produce for you and then ship, or like how does that work?
We're actually, one of the things that we pride ourselves on is we're actually beginning to end. So from conception to, we do work with an artist, a street artist, graffiti artist, Duro the Third. He's helped us a lot. I've worked with him in the past and still work with him on big projects. And he's helped us bring that kind of like street element into it. As far as the rest of our designs, we just look for inspiration from different places. It has come from a lot of people saying, oh, can you do this for me? Because a lot of people, even in Steffi's network, other parents are really creative and they have a very specific idea of what they want for their kids. And when we're able to create that and deliver something and they're like, oh my God, this is exactly what I was thinking. Like, that's super rewarding. So we're kind of taking the input that we're getting from people, plus trying to incorporate Montessori principles and elements of education. Because now that kids are stuck at home so much and being in the pandemic, and of course things are going to open back up eventually, but for now, the home classroom, the home space is more and more important. So we're trying to figure out, we're always trying to brainstorm new ways to educate and inspire with our designs so that kids, while they're learning from home, they actually are in a bright, fun, happy, inspiring environment.
I love that. That's so sweet. And so then how do you incorporate that element of like education into the designs? Is it like by colors or like, I don't know. Can you elaborate a little bit more? I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so one thing that we talk about a lot is like teachable moments. Like, how are we going to show a design and have like a little story behind it or some meaning or message where the kids can learn something? So we incorporate that like on our product pages or like through our social media. We also have, like, for example, an infant collection, and in there is a whole bunch of different designs that are black and white that when a child is first born, they only see in black and white until their eyesight develops. And it's not until I think 6 to 9 months that they start to see different colors, but it's a slow process. So to have something like that where we can incorporate, you know, developmental aspects to our products is important to us, and something that, you know, we didn't really see a lot of. So just kind of going with that. And then along with that are like our little Einstein collection, for example. You know, you have the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s and world maps and things like that to kind of broaden the scope of what can be placed on your wall.
Well, we kind of want parents to be able to recreate almost a kindergarten or a Montessori classroom at home. So whether it's shapes and colors, numbers, letters, like the alphabet, whatever, different animals. I mean, when we were working in Japan, you're only allowed to speak English, and the children are like, they pretty much only speak Japanese when you're dealing with 3 and 4-year-olds. So using visual aids was a huge part of our teaching techniques. So we're always thinking back to like, what were the tools that we used there to communicate the message?
I really think that's such a neat like perspective. And I've never seen anything like that. I have a lot of friends who are parents and their kids are in Montessori's, and like that style of learning is very different. It's like very hands-on, very, you know, going and doing it and like saying it out loud and like what is the specific thing. I'm thinking back to my friend's daughter who knew what the entire kitchen place setting thing was and what every like cup did and pot and this, and I'm like, you're 2. And it's really crazy. And so I think that, and you, Jen, you said in terms of like the pandemic, okay, yes, we will go back, but right now people are learning from home, and so are kids. And, you know, their attention spans are so short, and a lot of them spend a lot of time on the computer, and they spend a lot of time online, and so you're physically taking that off the computer screen and you're putting it on their wall for them to interact with a sibling or with a parent or something. And I just think that's so genius.
Well, we used to play so many games in the classroom, where like exciting games where it's like, okay, everybody go find something yellow. And then the kids are scattered around the room and they're all like looking, or go find an animal that flies. So what we've done is we've incorporated a lot of educational games in our blog that parents can not just use the decals as decoration, but they can also incorporate them into little home lessons, because it's really cool when the parents can get involved in the educational process, especially at an early age.
Yeah, and kids at such a young age, like they're such sponges. It's crazy. I mean, like, I'm sure like a lot of your listeners already know this, and young parents, any parents really, but like they take in so much more than we give them credit for. So just to like do these little games, there's so much more to them. Like there's so many layers, but to them, it's just a fun little game. So it helps, bring these products to life.
Quite literally. And I love that. I love that you're bringing that element into it, because I think that's so important, and especially in a time where it's like, a lot of technology just in general, and like parents don't always have the time to sit with their kids, and between working and cooking and taking care of the family and doing all these different things, having that like 5 or 10 minutes just to play and see what's like on the wall in front of you, I think is incredible. And in terms of like the actual products themselves, especially like the ones like numbers and letters and stuff like that, like, can you put them on the wall and then take them off, or do they stay on forever?
No, they can evolve with the kids. So even like we're trying to hit a price point where parents are going to feel comfortable using these tools, especially the Baby Einstein collection, using them for a certain period of time, and then not feeling bad about taking them down when their kids grow bored or they want to move on to the next level. So they're removable. They're not going to damage the wall in any way. They're super environmentally friendly. They're safe for kids, all that.
Yeah, which was like really important to us as well, right? You do all this research when you're looking at stuff to decorate nurseries with, for example, and it's overwhelming to see the do's and don'ts, and you have to kind of take it for, what it is. But to reduce the risk of injury, for example, by having something that can't get like pulled off the wall is super helpful. It's one less thing that you have to worry about. And sorry, I
think that's great. I think that's great. I was thinking about something as you were saying that. And I remember one of my friends, when she was pregnant with her daughter, her husband was painting mountains on the wall for the nursery. I think they painted for like 2 weeks. You know what I mean? And so it like changes the game, right? It changes the game of like, how much time do you have to spend? Plus, when you're pregnant, like you can't go and paint, you know what I mean? Like she couldn't help him because of all the fumes. You're not supposed to be around it, right? And so this poor guy's like painting like the frosting on like the tips of the mountain and whatever. And it just, in my mind, would be so much easier to purchase this beautiful artwork that is going to look good, and you just put it up on your wall, and then in a few short years you can just change it.
Yeah, and you don't feel like you're going to damage the wall, or that once it's up there you have to commit to it, because you can remove it. And even if you're like renting, for example, then you have that option to put it up and take it down and not worry about the damage. So
yeah, because we grew up in the suburbs, but now that I live in the city, you see all the apartment buildings and you realize how many kids are living in these apartments. So these aren't really situations where they could paint on the walls or really get into design. So it's a good alternative that they're going to get their security deposit back.
I love that. I remember when we lived in an apartment. When we moved in, our landlord was like, don't put anything on the walls, no holes, no this, no that. But then if it's somewhere you're living, you want to make it feel like home, right? Especially for young kids, and being in an apartment and making the space feel more alive. I love that. Does Ev love his little decals?
Yeah, it was fun to include him in like the process of putting it up. I think that like really got him excited and like on board. I don't doubt that soon he'll want to change, and we'll be mixing it up a bit. But I think it's important to include them. And then he gets Michaela all excited, even though she has no idea about what's going on.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's really cute to like get them be a part of it.
Oh, I love that so much. And then how did you like get him into it? Like, did you turn it into like a day where you were like, okay, we're going to do this? Or, what are some ways or tips that parents can actually get their kids involved in, the creation process and like really getting their minds going?
Yeah, so we had Auntie Jen come over, which is always a big deal.
Oh.
And then, well, to start it off, we kind of had him involved in like the whole process when we initially started the business, in terms of like taping and all of that stuff. We would kind of ask him where he wanted certain things. And while it still is our vision, he's able to like help bring it to life and help make it his own space, and like he was part of the process, right? So it's cute to see that. And then there's just different like products and different aspects that can be included and worked into whatever like you're learning or whatever is going on at that time.
So for Ab's room, he wanted the bears and trees.
Of course
So
he did.
after it was all up, then he was teaching Michaela. It's like, this is a mama bear, and here's the baby bears. This is me, and this can be you. And it was really cute.
That is so sweet. I am obsessed with your kids. They are so, so sweet. And it's been so long since I've seen them. Oh my God. They're so big now.
They're Auntie Mo.
Seriously, Auntie Mo's ready. Coming in full force. Do you need the wall decal change? Because I will come and help.
Yeah. No.
Oh my goodness. And then so the installation process of actually like once you purchase them and you receive them, is it pretty straightforward? Like how does that work?
No, there are different ways of putting them up. So we have some as simple as like peel and stick. So our watercolor polka dots, for example, you can just peel them off and then put them up in the pattern that you like. That was actually inspired by one of Steffi's neighbors who asked for that. And when we saw what he did with them, it was just really cool. You can see it on our Instagram because we love posting pictures from that the clients send in. And one of the more complicated kind, the decals that you put on, and there's transfer paper involved. We have an instructional video online, and we actually got feedback this morning from somebody who purchased one, and she was like, you know what, I was a little intimidated, but I watched your video and it was super easy and all that. So our goal is to make it as easy as possible for the end user. So that's why you'll see rating systems as to easy, medium, difficult level, so that you know what to expect.
Yeah.
For example, the Rocky Mountain wall mural, that takes a little bit more patience.
Yeah. An extra person with you just to get it lined up correctly. And, if you do have like a certain vision for how you want it, then you may need to measure, right? Like if there's a specific pattern you want for one of the products, then you may need to be like measuring or, get your level out, but it's all to fit your vision, right? So it's whatever direction you want to take it in.
And because we're so hands-on, then we're also customer service. So when people have any questions, then they DM us or they send us an email through the website, and we're happy to jump on the phone or FaceTime with clients just to make sure that they get it right, because we are owning the process from beginning to end, from design to printing out of Steffi's home to packaging it ourselves and taking it to the delivery service. So we want to make sure that even once it's out of our hands and in the hands of our clients, that they continue to have a good experience.
That's so important. Your customer experience, I think, is one of the most important things, because in terms of like brand, you can say whatever your brand is, but really what your brand is what other people are saying about you, right? So those reviews, those testimonials, those people who are so thrilled and happy with your customer service, like those things are so important, especially to a new business, right? Because there's so many kinks to work out in the beginning, but it's like how you handle them that makes all the difference. And, you both truly care, which I think is the difference. You care about your product as if you were putting it up on your own wall, and you can just tell by the amount and like level of detail that's gone into every part. Like to think about a sliding scale of how difficult it is to install. I would have never thought of doing that. And that's a genius idea. You're helping your client before they even have to pick up the phone and call you, so it's anticipating people's needs. And I truly believe that genuine care is what makes your brand grow, in a world where there are so many different businesses and so many different people doing all these different things. It's like that amount of detail and like genuine like love and care for your product and for your customers is what will always bring you to the next level. Because that's not something I think that you can like loop it in eventually, but I feel like that's just like so deeply embedded in who you are as people.
One of the things that we always promise ourselves is that we're just going to be guided by 2 principles, and that's educate and inspire. So if that message isn't behind anything, whether it's the wall decals or our posters or learning aids or even our onesies and t-shirts like for kids. So if that principle isn't behind it, then the product doesn't exist for us.
That's so true. That's so important. And I think that's really key too, in always making sure you're creating products that are aligned, always making sure you're doing things that are integrity with yourselves and with your brand, because you're being guided by your values. And so you're not going to forget them. And so for everyone who's listening right now, like a lot of my listeners are entrepreneurs. You all know how important that is, okay? And so always remembering that.
Yeah, because you can get so bogged down in the minutia, like all the details and like, oh, we got to meet this quota, or we've got to meet this deadline, or whatever it is. So just having those really simple core things, like your mission statement, they just stay with you the whole time. And you just always refer back to it.
I completely agree with you. I think that's so important. And I'd love to know too, any advice that you have, or, you know, what you would say to someone who wants to start their own business that maybe is scared to take the leap or doesn't really know where to start, because we all have that fear that's so embedded and we're scared to take leaps, and like everybody is. And I think that's like such a normal thing. But what would you say if someone was listening right now and they wanted to take the leap too?
Do it. Of course it's scary, and I mean, for me, it was leaving a full-time job, and that was like during the pandemic.
For me, it was like financial undertaking with a young family, and again during the pandemic, and not quite sure what was happening in the future, right? So I'm also a little bit more conservative when it comes to that kind of stuff, but we had the passion for it, so why not?
Well, and we were talking about this the other day, and I was telling her a story that when I was talking to kind of someone who's mentoring us through the whole printing process, because there's so many little technical details and product details. So we kind of have somebody guiding us through that. And he said that he quit his full-time job when his wife was 6 months pregnant, and they had a 2-year-old, and he was the sole breadwinner, and he just had it up to here with dealing with his boss, dealing with his full-time job. He quit, he walked out the door, he called his wife 6 months pregnant and said, honey, I quit. We're doing it ourselves. And he says, he says to this day, it was the best experience and the best decision he made in his entire life. That even with having a young family, there's always a concern that you're taking your time away from them. But he's like, now I'm the dad who goes on all the school trips. Like, I'm so much a part of their life, because if there's something on during the day, I'm there. I don't have a 9 to 5. I don't report to anybody else except for myself. And if I prioritize my children, that's how it's going to be. So to have Steffi have that option, and then me to be able to be part of that, then that's all that matters.
You don't know till you try, right? So
that's so true. It's such a good point. I also think too, I mean, by the time this airs, it'll be a couple months later, but Steph, I think you know this, but I took the leap from going from corporate in January to my own thing full time. And it was terrifying, because I'm like, okay, we just bought a house. Like, how will I pay for the mortgage? Like, all of the different things. And then it always works itself out. I keep thinking ahead, like, okay, eventually we will have kids. I'm so dramatic. Like, yes. I'm like, oh my God. No, but that is rooted in fear of like, how will I balance having a business, a full-time business essentially, and, you know, a family? Like, how does that all work? But I think that the magic of life and like the magic of all the things that we get to do, especially when you get to work for yourself, is like you get to create that however you want it to look. And so like you're saying, Jen, like you can totally take off those school trips, and sure, you might have to work a little bit later one night, but that's okay, because that's all part of the process. You know, in my opinion, I would prefer to work later for myself than for somebody else. So.
Well, exactly. And a lot of people said too, like quitting a full-time job, that, well, there's no security in what you're doing. And then the thing is, there's no security in that either. You can be fired at the drop of a hat. You can be let go. You can be made redundant. And I think if anything, the pandemic showed us that. So at least when you're working for yourself, you're in control. If it doesn't succeed, it's because you didn't put in the time, because you didn't put in the hustle, because maybe you needed to find a new idea. Whatever it is, the buck stops with you. You have no one else to hold accountable for that. So at least that's within your control, and you're not at the mercy of some corporate head office who looks at the numbers and decides, oh, that person needs to go. Or like with Steffi and teaching and trying to get on the supply list.
You're literally creating your own reality. And it's like, okay, well, that one plan doesn't work for now. But it's great too that you're bringing your educational background into what you're doing, because you are a teacher. So you know how kids learn, you know what's important for them and how they develop. And so I think it's just such a perfect balance between like, you know, Jen on like the creativity side and then you on like the education side. So you guys really do balance each other so nicely. And you can just tell like your synergy, even when we're all talking together.
Well, I've had 2 years to work it out.
Okay, I have one more question for you. And it's a question that I ask all of my guests when they come on the show, but it's how can someone create a little more happiness in their day, every day, starting today?
The first word that comes to mind is balance. I think balance is a huge aspect to help maintain like mental health, physical health, like everything. Just knowing, I think, what you want and when to dedicate certain times or whatever it is to certain projects or to your kids or to whatever it is, like whatever endeavor you're undertaking, having that balance is super important.
I love that. I love that. I think in the 2 years that are 2.5 years that I've asked this question, I don't think anyone's ever said balance. So that's a great one.
Okay.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And then Jen, what were you going to say?
I was just gonna, yeah, I totally agree with that. And the way that people go about it can vary, because like it's, for me, I find I need to tell my future self what to do. So like the night before, I write down my day and say, okay, this is what time you're waking up. This is what time you're doing a workout. This is when you can take a break. And of course, I don't always abide by that. And I don't always do it either. But I find I'm my happiest and most productive when I see, okay, you know what? I've allotted time here to meditate for 10 minutes. Or I'm actually telling myself to go for a walk. And if you don't even have to think about those things or try and remember everything, then it takes so much stress off and you are able to achieve more balance.
Yeah. And we were talking about this not too long ago. Like, you know, you come up with your to-do list. Like for us, it's a very visual process. You know, okay, this is what we have to bang out for the day or for the week. But that to-do list keeps growing and it's not going to stop because we're going to continue to grow. So it's having that balance to say, okay, you know, we've done this, we've knocked these things off. This is still a work in progress, but that's okay. Like, you know, now we have to focus on something else. So kind of helps keep you grounded when it can become a little bit chaotic.
Yeah, knowing when to close the laptop, have a glass of wine and chill out for a minute.
I completely agree with that. And that resonates a lot with me because balance is not something that I've ever been really great at. If you don't tell me to stop, like I won't type of thing. And so we just got a puppy a month ago. And so he's been a really nice reminder that like, wow, it's, you know, 12 p.m. and it's sunny out. Why don't you go step outside, you know, onto the grass? Because otherwise I have nothing bringing me there, you know? And so I think that what's the point of creating everything you want in your life if you really aren't enjoying the reason for creating it, right? To be able to step outside at 12 p.m. with having no one be like, where are you going? Why are you leaving? You know?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I love that. So where can our listeners find you online, and then where can they find your products?
Yeah, so our website is SooZooKids.com, SOOZOO kids.com. We're also on social media. We have TikTok, Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah. And you can always DM us or message us through our website. I'm Jenny at SooZooKids.com.
And Steph at SooZooKids.com.
So yeah, we're happy to answer any questions, or if anybody wants to reach out. I mean, part of this journey, and one of the most important parts is, and I hate this word, but networking, not in the cocktail after work convention center sense, but telling people what you're doing, asking people for advice, and even asking for help or lessons. Yeah. I mean, so many people are willing to help, like if you just ask.
And we won't be able to grow as a business or as individuals if we don't get that help, or if we don't, get that input or idea. So
we're not reinventing the wheel here. Nobody is. We're just designing it our way. We're designing our own vehicle.
It's so funny you should say that, because that's literally when you go to like teachers college or like trying to make a new lesson or whatever, they're like, you're not reinventing the wheel. Like, you don't have to come up with it all by yourself. There's all these ideas out there. You just have to make them your own. So it's funny you should say that.
It's so true though. I mean, like it's such a good point. You really don't have to reinvent the wheel, but I completely agree with you. I think networking is so important, especially now that like most things are online. You don't really have events anymore where you can go and do that. And so it's like every person that you meet, I'm a true believer that every person that you meet is bringing something to you that maybe you don't know you need yet. Maybe it was opening a door that you never even thought would be a thing for you. And then you cross the door and you're like, oh my God, like that was on the other side of that. Like it's incredible.
And then you got to look back and be like, all right, who else wants to come?
Exactly. Like, come on down. Well, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today. I've had so much fun chatting with you both.
Thank you so much for having us.
You're so welcome. And thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to the Happiness Happens podcast. I will see you all on next week's episode. And until then, remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it. Well, it looks like